following is an excerpt from the book Women and Men in the Light of Eden by Bruce C.E. Fleming and read by him from pages 27 to 32. God's 11 words to the woman in Genesis 3:16. God's words to the woman were not arranged in the same pattern used with the serpent angel and with the man. Her case was different from the two rebels. Her situation was unlike theirs. God's words to her were not all about bad news. Instead, God spoke to her of good news and bad news. God's words to the woman took only 11 Hebrew words. Some of these were common words, some were very rare words. A look at each word is needed in order to think again about the meaning of the whole verse. Words 1 through 4. Here are the first 4 Hebrew words in line 1 of Genesis 3:16 that came after the words of introduction God said to the woman. Word 1, multiplying. Word 2, I will multiply. Word 3, your sorrowful toil. Word 4, and your conception. These look like multiple words in English, but in Hebrew they are just one word, and I show them with dashes to explain what words in English stick together and form what is one word in Hebrew. God said to the woman that 2 things, words 3 and 4, would be multiplied, or it would surely come to pass. God said she would experience sorrowful toil, the Hebrew word is itzabon, and God said she would experience conception, the Hebrew word is heron. Words 1 and 2, to multiply. The verb to multiply used in words 1 and 2 was familiar to the woman. She had heard it on day 6 of creation when God blessed her and her husband and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, Genesis 1:28. In Genesis 3:16, this action word was repeated in a way which spoke of things that were sure to come to pass. Most translations get the idea across in the English phrase, I will surely multiply. To repeat to multiply in this way was done only 3 times in the Old Testament, Genesis 3:16, Genesis 16:10, and 22:17. Each time these words came from God. Each time the word seed, or offspring, was used along with them. Seed was a meaningful word. It spoke of a seed, but it contained within it the possibility of many seeds or descendants. For example, God made this promise after he blessed Abraham, I will surely multiply your seed, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. Genesis 22:17. Word 3, sorrowful toil. God told the woman she would experience 2 things. She would have, word 3, sorrowful toil, and, word 4, conception. The man would be told about sorrowful toil in the next verse in Genesis 3:17. They would experience the same sorrowful toil. The single cause of it would be God's curse on the ground because of the man. All food would have to come from the cursed soil. It would be this sorrowful toil the woman and the man would experience. It had to do with raising food. When God told the woman she would experience sorrowful toil, the earth had not yet been cursed. This prophecy told what would happen, but not what would cause it to happen. The word sorrowful toil, itzabon, was a very rare word. In addition to God's prediction of it to the woman in Genesis 3:16 and God's announcement of it to the man in Genesis 3:17, it was used only in Genesis 5:29. In Genesis 5:29, its meaning was the same. When the parents of newborn Noah named him, they expressed their hope that life would be better because of this child. They hoped he would provide them relief from the sorrowful toil they were experiencing as a result of the curse on the soil. They called his name Noah, saying, this one will comfort us concerning our work and the sorrowful toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. This was not just any kind of work. The English words work or toil are not nearly as precise as this Hebrew word. It was a very specific kind of toil, a sorrowful toil. It meant the sorrowful toil which results from God's curse on the soil. This is the bad news God announced to the woman. She would have sorrowful toil. Word 4, conception. The woman had heard God tell Satan and the serpent about her seed, Genesis 3:15. In Genesis 3:16, God spoke to her directly about her seed. The meaningful word conception was used for seed. Many people have missed the connection of the promise of seed in verse 15 with conception in verse 16. To conceive and have seed or descendants was big news. It was good news. It was a look into the woman's future. It was also a look into victory over her enemy. Sadly, many translations make it look as if God's first words to the woman in Genesis 3:16 had all bad news, or even something like a curse for the woman. Not so. From our place in history, it's possible to see the whole line of descendants who were conceived from the first woman down to Mary, the virgin, who conceived by the Holy Spirit. Luke 3:23-38. Galatians 3:16. Mary's child Jesus was the seed to crush the serpent's head. Because most modern translations do not use the word conception, another important truth from the Garden of Eden is missed at this point. There is no question of when human life begins. When Genesis 3:16 is translated correctly, human life begins at conception. What about the translations of Genesis 3:16 that have said that God spoke about pain in childbirth? They are incorrect. God did not speak about childbirth in these first four Hebrew words to the woman. God spoke of conception. Conception took place 9 months before childbirth. God did not speak to the woman about pain. God spoke to her about the sorrowful toil that would be involved in raising crops from the cursed ground. There is nothing about pain in childbirth in the first four Hebrew words of Genesis 3:16. This must be kept in mind in order to clearly understand the rest of God's words to the woman in Genesis 3:16. Words 5-11. In the next 7 Hebrew words in Genesis 3:16, words 5-11, God told the woman other important things. God explained what life would be like after sin and death at the tree. Hebrew word 5, with effort. 6, you will bring forth. 7, children. Hebrew word 8, your desire is. 9, for your husband. Word 10, but he. 11, will rule over you. Words 5-7. With these words, not before, God told her about childbirth. God explained that as a mother with a mortal body that was subject to pain and death, she would give birth with, quote unquote, effort. The Hebrew word effort, etsev, was not a word reserved for childbearing. It was used in other places in the Bible for various types of effort. God did not curse the woman, nor did God change her childbearing with these words. Nowhere in God's 11 words to the woman was the Hebrew word curse used. The news that childbearing would involve effort was said on the way to glad news, because next God spoke of children. She would bear more than just one child. God's commandment of day 6 to be fruitful parents and fill the earth with children was still in effect. Would the first of her children crush Satan? There was drama for her as she looked forward to the first child she would conceive. Words 8-11. Next, God explained to the woman what had happened to her relationship with the man. There was glad news and sad news. In words 8 and 9, God spoke about what was in her heart. It had not changed. They were newlyweds. They had desired each other. Love. God confirmed that her desire was for her husband, as it had been before. She had not rebelled like the man and taken the side of the serpent. Her words to God were not twisted like theirs were. She had not blamed the man. Her desire for him was not twisted either. Her desire was good and natural. The word desire of one lover for another was used in the Bible only one other time. It was a good desire. Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 11. In words 10 and 11, God explained the sad news about the change in her husband. God explained to the woman that the man was not like what he was when God brought them together. The man had rejected his good relationship with God, and had presumed to rule himself in God's place. The man had also rejected her. He had turned against the woman by blaming her along with God for his sin. Genesis 3:12. God alone had the right to rule over the woman, just as it was right for God to rule over the man. God warned the woman that the man who had presumed to rule over himself desired to take the place of God again to rule over her. For the man to impose this on the woman was not good. It was evil. It is evil for anyone to take the place of God. I've been reading from Women and Men in the Light of Eden by Bruce C.E. Fleming.